everyone. Thank you for joining me for this week's interview episode of the Corporate Escape Stories on Screw the Cubicle TV, where I share stories of people who left their 9-to-5 existence to create an unconventional life and career that they love. And today's guest, I have Ryan Charnov, who is the co-founder of Givefluence, a technology startup that stimulates charitable giving to over 840,000 causes through the online activities such as shopping and searching the internet. So I really wanted to invite Ryan today for an interview because firstly, I love a business that has a philanthropy aspect to it. So I wanted him to share his story, really how he was able to infuse things that mattered to him in his business model, and really find out the story around social entrepreneurship and advice he might give to people who are looking to be social entrepreneurs. So thank you very much for coming to speak to me, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share my story.
Yeah, me too. So I want to start with kind of asking, how did Givefluence, how was that, the thing that you started with? So is this your first startup, first of all?
This is my first startup.
Okay, great. So what do you think so I don't know what you did in your old career, so you can tell me a bit about that, but what did you used to do in your old career? And really, how did you come up with the idea for Givefluence?
Sure. So my background was actually in consulting. So specifically, I worked in Salesforce effectiveness. So most of my clients and projects were centered around designing an incentive program that would align corporate incentives with the incentives of the sales force. So something kind of completely different, but some of the strategic thinking was similar. The way I came up with the idea was actually completely outside of work. I was new to Chicago, and I was running a half marathon in support of a local charity here that one of my friends was involved with. And one of the important components to running the half marathon was a fundraising requirement. So they set us up with this crowdfunding page, and they asked us to send it out to our friends and our family and ask for financial support. So I sent it out, and I got a lot of feedback from my family members. They contributed, but a lot of my friends told me that they didn't have the financial means to donate and contribute. So even though they supported the cause and wanted to help out, they had student loans and were just out of school or credit card debt. So it really started as more of a side project to see if I could figure out a way for more people like myself to be able to give back to causes that they cared about without necessarily being in a financial position to give in the traditional sense. So That was how we started, and over time we developed into a more kind of robust business.
And I love that you kind of did it as a side thing first before kind of throwing everything in that basket, putting all your eggs into that basket. So you kind of did it as a side hustle while you were probably consulting and doing your full-time job. When you were doing that phase of the development of the idea and seeing if this idea is viable, right? Because that's important for us to put effort into it. How did you validate your idea and know that this idea will make you money?
Yeah, it was really difficult. And to be honest, we're still in the process to an extent of validating it, making sure that we can scale to the level that we think we can. But from our perspective, we started in July, and by October, we had enough retailers on board that were interested in giving back through online shopping that we decided we really had to kind of develop this and create a website. So in October, we sent it out to friends and families and supporters of around 14 charities that we had personal connections with. And through that, we were allowed to have kind of a base of people to test it out with, to get feedback, and to really prove that just through holiday shopping, you can make a significant impact. So it really started with a small group of users that we had already known or that were already supportive of charities that we worked with. And over time, grew to be something a little bit larger.
Yeah, so it sounds like this idea is kind of playing up something that you're passionate about, one of your passions perhaps, and it kind of branched from a problem you saw, right, in your everyday world, which was triggered by this kickstarting or fundraising campaign that you had before, which showed this problem of, well, people do want to give their money to charity, but, how do they do this on a daily basis, right? And that became your idea. So when you think about, that moment you decided on creating Givefluence. Was it important for you as an individual to have this element of passion, and this cause that you believe in your business? Because I know a lot of people struggle with that. It's like, I want to do good in the world, but I also want to make money, right? And they feel like they have to pick either or at times, and money, when it's merged with cause and something they care about, all of a sudden it's dirty, so I'm
right.
curious to know, like, first of all, was it important to you to have this passion that you cared about as part of your business? And what's your advice for people who are in that limbo of wanting to build a social enterprise and do good in the world, but also want to make money?
Yeah, absolutely. So to be honest, I don't think I would have been able to start this organization if there wasn't the social side to it. I was, happy and satisfied with my job. And although I'd always seen myself and envisioned myself as an entrepreneur, it really takes that passion and spark to kind of push you or push me to that next level to where I'm going to actually quit my job. So from a personal standpoint, just looking at what's important to me and what's going to really motivate me, I don't think I would have even taken this leap had there not been another element that I'm passionate about. In terms of social entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurship in general, it's a tricky subject because the goal is to maximize, the good in what you do in the world, while also being able to make a living. And from my perspective, since I started this as a side business, I wasn't sure if this was going to be a business or if it would be better structured as a nonprofit organization in and of itself. And one of the things I realized as I was kind of doing my due diligence was that if there wasn't the for-profit side to it, we wouldn't be able to do some of the things that would allow us to scale, to be able to attract investment in the future. I wouldn't be able to do it as a full-time endeavor, which would not allow us to grow to the level that we wanted. So from my perspective, it was about finding the best method to kind of merge those things that are important, which is being able to make a living and provide for yourself while also being able to do a lot of good and grow, the social side of things.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we need money to survive in our lives. And obviously money is what we're using now as a tool, right? To do good in the world. And you can spend that money to make everything bigger for you and better for you, rather than be a charitable case and be able to only do it on the side on weekends, which is a kind of a bit of a disservice to yourself and to other people, and being able to merge those two pieces together. So now that you've gone through this startup phase for launching Givefluence, I'm sure you've learned a lot along the way. I'm sure you've fallen in the mud a lot along the way as well. What's kind of the biggest mistake from your experience so far, and seeing maybe other social entrepreneurs launching something? What do you think is the biggest mistake that people make when they want to become a social entrepreneur, and what should they be focusing on instead?
Sure. So I think it's really, really easy to let your own passion and your own view of the world cloud your judgment to an extent. So anytime you're starting something new, it's important to get valuable and critical feedback. And it's already difficult when you're asking family or friends or people who know you, to give you honest and difficult feedback. But when you have a social side to it, and when your idea involves, helping out others, people are even more reluctant to kind of say anything negative or anything that can be construed as not supporting your cause. So for me, I really had to work to get people to give me harsh criticism and harsh feedback so that we could actually, do the things that we need to develop and to get better as an organization. The other side of that is just because you are passionate about something, you don't want to assume that others are. So I knew from my perspective that, I would be willing to take a few extra steps if it meant giving back to charity. But that doesn't mean that every consumer would be willing to do the same. So I had to not necessarily view it through my own lens, but view it through the lens of the consumer and see how I could, minimize the barriers to giving, so that not only you're giving the greatest amount possible, but you're doing so in the easiest and quickest and most efficient way, so that everyone can give, not just those who are willing to do multiple steps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, when you think about charity or things that they can contribute to, is kind of daunting at times because, you're like, I'm not this kind of tree hugger, hippie person climbing trees to
Right.
protect the rainforest. Like, I'm an everyday guy that, or girl, that is, it wasn't easy, right, in my day to day. And I love the fact that you incorporate day to day buying. It's not an extra expense in a way, right,
Right.
for them to put into it, because sometimes people don't have that sort of money. And you've managed to make this platform, or one of your intentions is to make this platform easy enough for people to never have to think twice, right? Really about doing this. So I want to talk a little bit about this sort of testing of your idea and validation, because we talked a bit about it, a couple minutes ago. So I am truly believing in testing things, services or products, before we, really commit to effort and money and time, right? With websites and coding and apps and things like that we might get all out there right away. So I'm curious to know, how did you prepare your beta test? So did you what was like the simplest, leanest way that you validated in the beginning of time to then really tell you that, okay, now I can start spending money on hiring a developer and putting more investment into this business?
Yeah, so we started with a really small group of individuals who we knew would help support us and who would test it out. So that consisted of a lot of friends, a lot of family members, and a lot of just peers. So we had maybe 50 users who offered to look at what we had and give us as much feedback as possible. The great thing about that was we got valuable feedback that would, from a diverse group of people. So everyone from, my grandmother looked at the site to my younger brother. So you're looking at different consumers. But the downside is that it doesn't necessarily reflect the general market. So for us, we had to kind of take all of our results with a grain of salt and realize that, your friends and family and the people that you know are going to give you feedback that's helpful, but you've got to make sure to understand, their own perspectives and the limitations in the feedback they give. I also would just go up to random people at Starbucks or different places and just ask them simple questions, which gave me some good and honest feedback. But honestly, it's a combination of asking other people, knowing yourself, what the goals that you have for your website or your organization or user experience to be, and then ultimately seeing, how well the platform that you have gives you the ability to test the market and test your idea. So for us, we've had about 3 or 4 different iterations, and we're constantly coming out with new iterations and new looks to our website so we can, test out small little things and theories.
Very good. So even before you were going through user experience with kind of like a handful of guinea pigs, before that, even like just to even say, is this idea worthwhile pursuing? Did you by any chance do any sort of, surveys or interviews with people who are everyday people, your ideal avatar that would be using this application? Did you kind of survey a majority of people that would give you an indication that they would actually participate when this, the first launch of the app or the platform is available?
Yeah, so we did ask people that we trusted whether they would use a platform like this, and we tried to get as much feedback about that as possible. From our perspective, actually, what we were more worried about was getting retailers on board. So we were actually trying to collect information about retailers and corporate social responsibility to understand if there was room in the budget or if there was a financial opportunity for retailers to donate a portion of their online sales. So we actually spent probably 70 to 80% of our time focusing on the retailer side and figuring out how we could kind of acquire retailers that would be strategic partners for us. And that process kind of led us to believe that if we could get retailers on board so quickly, there must be a market for this.
Yeah, they're kind of like your primary ideal client, actually, and then a secondary client, which is the actual users, which is interesting for sure. So when you and I talked, before the interview started, and when you emailed me about Givefluence, you had mentioned a few times that you believe that many people kind of romanticize this notion of leaving a corporate job, right, to pursue their passions, and very few people really think about like the logistical parts of businesses and these sort of factors that are really necessary for a success, right, of an individual or a business. So how did you personally prepare for this major life decision, and what are some of the misconceptions that you want to bust right now from knowing what you know now today?
Yeah, it's tough. So when you're working in a corporate environment, it's pretty often that you'll hear people talking about wanting to start something on their own and leave the corporate environment for bigger and better pastures. But I think you have to remember that the goal isn't just to quit your job and start something. It's to set yourself up for success and meaningful experience in the way that you define it. So for me personally, once we had this idea and I had to make this decision of, do I really want to devote this portion of my life to pursuing this, I kind of had an honest discussion with myself, and I thought about what are the barriers to success for me. So for me, I realized that there were kind of three big barriers. The first just being financial. Do I have the financial resources to take a risk like this? When I realized I didn't, I decided that I was going to save up money for a period of time and create a financial plan to be able to take on this risk. The second was skills. Even though we've had a lot of help with the technology side of things, I at the time did not have any of the technology skills required to even make the right sorts of decisions to get this up and running and promoting it. So I took some time to take coding classes and develop those skills so that I could be successful in this role. And then the third one was more of kind of an internal thing, which is it was more about time. So I wasn't sure if this was going to be a side business, a full-time business, a nonprofit, how I wanted it to fit in my life. And I realized that with the hours I was working in consulting, it just wasn't possible to have this, have that, have my outside social life and all of that. So I decided that in order for me to pursue this, I would have to give up the time spent elsewhere, which was in consulting. So for me, it's about defining kind of the barriers to success in what you want to do, and then kind of systematically creating a way to overcome those barriers, or at least assess them in an honest way.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that you went straight to the question that will keep you up at night, right? Which is some of the negative parts, of launching a business, which is money and, as you said, time and skills. But you looked at the barriers as an opportunity, right? It wasn't the end for you just because you had barriers.
Right.
It was kind of a different perspective of like, okay, there's something that I need to upskill on, I need to make money on. But here's then the next solution for me, in order to bypass this barrier, which I think is a great message to share, because I think a lot of people, when they look at hurdles or struggles or they hit a wall on an idea, they automatically think, oh, I'm not meant to do it. It's too difficult.
Right.
But actually, it's perhaps the success is just right behind that wall if you can figure out how to get over it, right? Which I think that's what you're seeing by taking that time to do that. So you mentioned, getting your finances in order in terms of investment that you have to spend on your product or the creation of your services. You mentioned also upskilling, or potentially having to upskill yourself or hire someone anyway with those skill sets in order to perform the model, right, of the business that you have. And then lastly, you also mentioned what type of business it can be, right? Is it something you are truly wanted to start on the side, or is it going to replace your full-time income? And it sounds like you made decisions, right, of exchanges in a way with your life, like less going out to the pub with my friends and more time, boxed in to focus on my business. And I think that is what it is. It's not really a sacrifice. It's an exchange of time and opportunity,
right, exactly,
you currently have. Yeah. So, as you as you're talking about the story, it kind of reminds me of kind of all the moving parts that people struggle with, right? In the beginning of launching a startup, like the first 2 years of a business is usually the most difficult. And so because of all these different moving parts of financials and skills and, failing and then moving past that again, it's quite common for people to kind of fail or fall by the wayside during the startup phase. So how did you yourself keep inspired and motivated in this path of launching Givefluence for yourself?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of people, the issue may not be motivation as much as it is direction. So I think as an entrepreneur, a lot of time, you have this, go get them attitude. You're going to go out there and change the world. But there's not really a roadmap to success, where there may be more of a roadmap in, kind of a corporate environment. So I think for me, the way I stayed motivated was I knew that I, could accomplish any goal that I set out. I just had to go and set goals and set realistic goals and kind of internally decide how it was that I was going to spend my time and what I was going to focus on. So I think the biggest thing, the biggest piece of advice from that is don't kind of think that it's all about motivation. It's about having, a plan for success. And then you can get motivated to accomplish those goals and to reach that plan. But you have to kind of marry the two in order to be successful.
And did you find, Ryan, that if you were to create goals that were because what I find for me personally is that I would like to see long-term goals for sure to see where things can go.
Right.
But what motivates me on a daily basis is kind of like having small wins along the way. Having little milestones to meet rather than waiting till like 2 years down the road to be like, okay, it's launched now and we're making money. And because that's going to be a 2-year span of like, just grinding it. So did you find that you had to kind of set small goals along the way for yourself to reach and feel like you're kind of completing a tick mark of things to reach that higher or that bigger destination?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a balance of those two. You want to have kind of small daily wins so that you feel like every day when you go to sleep, I did something, I accomplished something, and now I can move on to the next day. At the same time, you want to make sure those small wins add up to the full amount and the full win that you want in the long term.
Yeah, and having the flexibility probably to pivot as well, right? Like pivot and change as you go if you need to.
Exactly, yeah. And I think it's really difficult as well to realize that not everything is set in stone. And not everything needs to be perfect the first time. So a good example of that would be when we were coming up with our name, we must have gone through 1,000 iterations of our name, and we would think of all these different, we had this Google spreadsheet with 1,000 different names, and we'd look up if the domain was available, and it took us about a month. And we realized that at the end of the month, the name that we went with was one of the names that we had brainstormed the first day. Right. So you kind of have to set a deadline for when you're going to accomplish things, because at a certain point, there's almost diminishing returns to getting perfection, if that makes sense. And that's something that was really hard for me, was understanding that you have larger goals in mind, and as much as you think of it as kind of your baby and your perfect world, you have to just set a deadline and be comfortable with moving forward with imperfection at times.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it shouldn't take a month to make a name, and if every decision takes you that long, you're never going to be able to pivot and move forward and really grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think going with good enough and being able to have the flexibility to know that it's not going to make or break it all, like you can always change things, you can always merge and pivot and along the way, but going with good enough allows you to then open the next door, right? Which can absolutely solve some of the problems you currently have today, right? But it's to keep kind of moving forward in chunked down actions, in order to kind of feel momentum and feel inspired, right? To keep going rather than being stuck constantly in one thing. And I love the deadline thing because it forces you to make a decision. And most of the time that decision isn't as big as you thought it was in your head, for sure, right? Yeah. Thank you so much for giving us all your insight about your path to launch your social venture. And if people are interested to find out more about Givefluence or connect with you as a social entrepreneur and pick your brain on a few things, where can they find you right now, Ryan?
Sure. So you can always find our website at giftfluence.com, giftfluence.com. We're on Twitter at Giftfluence. And then you can also feel free to email me at any time with any questions you might have at ryan@giftfluence.com.
Great. Thank you so very much for giving us such great information on social entrepreneurship, and really instilling that belief I believe in as well, which is about the balance, right, of passion and a model that makes money. Because if not, nobody's passion is getting out there and no one's getting the service that you truly
Right.
provide. And it's not a selfish thing to have both, and it allows us that strength of money to scale and reach more people and impact more people globally, which is the point of what you're doing in the first place. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. For more corporate escape stories, advice, and free courses, check out screwthecubicle.com.